My name is Marina Hale, and I'm 37 years old. If you had looked at my life on paper 3 months ago, you would have said something tidy and harmless like, she's fine, she's stable, she's got it figured out. And honestly, you wouldn't have been wrong. I had a quiet life, modest house, reliable car, retirement contributions that steadily ticked upward like a metronome marking time. Nothing extravagant, nothing chaotic, just order, calm, and the familiar hum of routines I built myself. Then I met Lucas Armitage. We met through a hiking group, the kind that made you sign a waiver and promised challenging terrain with rewarding views. The first time he introduced himself, he smiled like he'd been trained how. Polished, confident, charming, in a way that felt practiced but still warm. He worked in consulting, came from old money, carried himself like someone who had always known where the expensive exits were. We started dating casually. It became serious around month 8. Before long, we were the comfortable couple the group teased for always sharing trail snacks and finishing each other's stories. After 2 years, I thought we were quietly building something real. But I also knew, from the very first dinner I had with his family, that they didn't see me the way he did. The Armitage home was the kind of place where every object had a silent price tag attached. Country club wealth. Summer homes. Art on the walls that looked like paint had been thrown by someone charging per brushstroke. The first time I walked in, Lucas's mother took one look at my shoes, simple tan flats, and smiled tightly. "That's practical," she'd said, the way someone might comment on a weather forecast. His father asked about my job in civil project administration, then interrupted his own question to ask a passing server for a different wine. His sister Serena, who was 29 and lived off a trust fund, once asked if I'd ever considered aiming higher with my career. The kind of question that sounded like curiosity until you noticed the glint behind it. Lucas always apologized later. "They're old-fashioned," he'd say. "They'll warm up. Give them time." Except time did nothing. Every family dinner felt like walking into someone else's audition. Not performing well enough, not impressive enough, not enough. But with Lucas, it was easy. He'd lean across the table, squeeze my hand under the linen cloth, and his eyes would soften like he was silently promising, "Ignore them. I'm here." I believed him. I shouldn't have. The moment everything shifted happened on a Sunday in late August. We were at his parents' mansion for their monthly brunch, something I'd endured for nearly 2 years. Lucas was upstairs changing because his sister had commented that his shirt clashed with the dining room aesthetic. I wandered into the living room, sat on the massive couch facing a painting that probably cost more than my mortgage. The house was too quiet, like it was trained to swallow sound. Then I heard voices down the hall, coming from the study. The door was cracked open just an inch. Lucas' mother. "She's nice, but she's so ordinary." His father. "No presence, no ambition." His mother again. "Lucas can do better. Much better." There was a pause, a soft clink of glasses. Then his mother said something that made my stomach tighten. "Remember Camille, his ex? Now she had potential. We should invite her to the charity gala next month. Let them reconnect." His father hummed in agreement. "She was polished, elegant, came from a good family. Perfect fit." Perfect fit. The words slid under my skin like splinters. I didn't listen for more. I stepped away from the doorway, forced my breathing steady, and went back to the living room to stare at that ridiculous painting again. It looked different now, like some abstract joke I hadn't been in on. When Lucas came downstairs 10 minutes later, he glanced at my face. "You ready?" he asked. I said yes. My voice sounded like it came from someone else. Brunch blurred past me. Commentary about market volatility, a story about a golf tournament, more little digs wrapped in etiquette. I barely spoke. Lucas kept looking at me with concern, but I couldn't decide whether telling him what I heard would fix anything or simply expose how little control he had over his own family. On the drive home, he reached across the console. "You were quiet today. Just tired." He accepted that. I don't know if that made it better or worse. That evening, we were at his apartment. Sleek, minimal, expensive, in a way that didn't try to hide it. He was at the stovetop cooking a meal that required ingredients I couldn't pronounce. I watched him move through his kitchen like he belonged to a world scripted for people like him. Even after 2 years, I still felt like a guest there. "Marina," he said suddenly, not looking up from the pan, "I need to tell you something." My fingers tightened around my glass. "Okay." "My parents want me at their charity gala next month." "All right." "And they're inviting someone they want me to reconnect with." The room went cold. Who? I asked, though I already knew. He exhaled. Camille. I put my glass down slowly. And what do you want? He finally looked at me, hesitated. I think they're being ridiculous, but they're not going to stop pushing, and she'll be there, and I want you to understand. Understand what? That my parents prefer her. They think you're too plain. There it was, the truth spoken not in cruelty, but in resignation. A clarity settled inside me, heavy, sharp, alive. Fair enough, I said. Lucas frowned. What, that's it? What else am I supposed to say? He wanted a fight. Tears. Begging. Something dramatic enough to match the discomfort of the moment. But I felt nothing except a sudden, crystalline truth slicing through the last 2 years. I'm not going to compete for your parents' approval, I told him quietly. And I'm not going to stand in the way of their dreams of a perfect daughter-in-law. Marina. I'm tired, Lucas. I am tired of shrinking myself so they feel taller. His face twisted, torn between guilt and defensiveness. We'll talk later, I said. I need some space. He didn't stop me when I walked out. He never did. I drove home with the windows down, the night wind cold against my face, feeling like I'd just stepped out of a house that had been slowly suffocating me. I didn't know it yet, but that night was the beginning of the end. The thing about clarity is that it doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it just sits there, quiet and heavy, waiting for you to stop pretending you don't see it. The week after that conversation in Lucas's kitchen, I moved through my life like I was watching someone else play me. I went to work. I answered emails. I attended meetings about drainage plans and timelines and budgets. I smiled when I was supposed to. I nodded in all the right places. If anyone noticed that my laugh didn't quite reach my eyes, they were polite enough not to say anything. Every night, though, when the house was finally quiet, the same thoughts looped in my head. They think you're too plain. My parents prefer her. They want us to reconnect. It wasn't just what he said. It was how he'd said it, like it was a weather report, just a neutral fact I needed to absorb and move on from. He didn't even seem to realize he'd handed me my answer. I didn't text him. He didn't text me. That alone told me more than I wanted to admit. On Wednesday, I came home to my neat little kitchen and opened my laptop instead of turning on the TV. I made a list, because that's what I do when the world feels like it's tilting. What I have with Lucas: comfort, familiarity, physical attraction, shared jokes from hikes and burnt coffee. I pause, staring at the cursor. What I don't have with Lucas: public defense, respect from his family, a seat at the table that isn't conditional, the sense that I am enough as I am. My chest tightened as I typed the last one. I realized that for 2 years, I'd been auditioning for a role I never actually wanted. I didn't want to be some polished, high society fantasy. I wanted to be myself, ordinary in the best ways, steady, real, enough. But in his world, enough had always been calibrated against someone like Camille. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the hum of my refrigerator and the distant sound of a neighbor's dog barking. My life felt small in that moment, but also honest. No chandeliers, no charity galas, no expectations I hadn't agreed to. Just me, in a house I paid for, living a life I built. By Saturday night, I knew what I had to do. I called him Sunday afternoon. He answered on the second ring. Marina. Just my name. No joke, no warmth, just tension. Can we talk? I asked. Yes, please, come over. His voice sounded relieved, hopeful even. I knew, in that moment, he thought this was the conversation where we'd work through it, where I'd tell him I understood, that I'd taken some time and decided to stay. He didn't realize what he'd already taught me. His building's lobby smelled like polished stone and citrus cleaner. The elevator ride was too smooth, the kind of smooth that made you feel like you weren't really moving. When he opened the door, he looked like he hadn't slept much. His hair was slightly messy, his eyes shadowed, t-shirt and jeans instead of the usual button-down. He stepped aside to let me in. I'm glad you're here, he said. I looked around his apartment. The spotless countertops, the art on the walls, the floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking a part of the city that pretended problems were things that happened elsewhere. I'd once thought this view meant success. Now it just looked like distance. We need to talk, I said. He nodded, swallowing. Yeah, we do. We sat across from each other at his dining table. The last time we'd been here, he'd made some elaborate meal with a French name. Today there was nothing but 2 glasses of water and the silence between us. He tried to break it first. I shouldn't have said it like that, he blurted. About what my mother said. I was just trying to be honest. You were, I agreed, surprising him. That's what scares me. He flinched. Marina. For 2 years, your parents have made it very clear what they think of me, I said quietly. I heard them talk about me like I was a mistake. I've listened to your father change the subject when I talk about my work. I've listened to your sister ask if I've considered doing something more significant with my life, as if what I do doesn't matter. He opened his mouth. They're just old-fashioned, I finished for him. Set in their ways? You've used all of those words, but what they really are is disrespectful, and you let them be. His jaw tightened. I've defended you, he said. I've told them they're wrong about you. In private, after the fact. My voice didn't rise, but I saw him flinch anyway. You apologize to me later, but you never stop them while it's happening. You never tell them to knock it off at the table. You never say, that's enough, when they talk about me like I'm some charity project you picked up. That's not fair. It's completely fair. I stared at my hands for a second, finding my balance. When I looked back up, he was watching me, eyes glossy, with something between anger and panic. The night we talked, I continued, you told me your parents prefer Camille, that they think I'm too plain, and you said it like it was just another fact I needed to accept, like the weather. I was being honest, he repeated, desperation creeping into his voice. Would you rather I lied? I would rather you cared more about how those words landed than about whether you were being technically honest, I said. I would rather you had said, my parents are wrong, I love you, and I'm not going to let them compare you to anyone. He looked away, jaw clenching. I love you, he said finally. That has to count for something. It does, I said. It counts for a lot. But it doesn't erase the fact that you've let them treat me like I'm not enough for 2 years. You're twisting this. No, I said softly. I'm finally untangling it. Silence stretched between us. This doesn't have to be the end, he said, leaning forward. I can talk to them. I can make them understand. I'll tell my mother to stop. I'll tell my father to respect you. I'll set boundaries. I didn't realize how much it was hurting you. I believed that he meant it in this moment. I also believed it wouldn't last. You've had 2 years, I said. 2 years of watching me sit through dinners where I was the easiest target. 2 years of seeing me shrink a little bit more every time your family made me feel small. And you only want to change now because I finally said I'm done. That's not true. Then answer this, I said. Why didn't you defend me the first time your sister mocked my career? Or the 5th? Why didn't you tell your father to stop changing the subject when I answered his questions? Why didn't you tell your mother that calling me ordinary wasn't acceptable? He opened his mouth, then closed it again. His eyes glistened. I didn't want to make things worse, he said, his voice low. You don't know what they can be like when someone pushes back. So you sacrificed me instead, I said. You kept the peace with them by letting them disrespect me. You chose the path of least resistance, and I was the one who had to live with the cuts. That's not what I'm not accusing you of being a villain, Lucas, I said. I'm saying you're not brave enough to be my partner, not in the way I need. He sucked in a breath like I'd slapped him. That's harsh. That's reality. The words echoed something I'd told myself in my kitchen a few days ago. Hearing them out loud felt like closing a circle. I'm done, I said quietly. His head snapped up. What? I'm done with this, I repeated. With us. With trying to fit into a world where I'm always a few steps below the bar. With loving someone who lets me sit at a table where I'm never really welcome. He stood up suddenly, pacing a short line between the table and the kitchen. You're just going to walk away? After everything? Because of something my parents said? I'm walking away, I said, standing too. Because of what you didn't say. Because of every time you stayed silent. He shook his head, eyes wet. We can fix this. I'll talk to them. I'll tell them they're wrong about you. I'll make them apologize. You can't undo 2 years with one speech, I said gently. Even if you manage to drag an apology out of them, it'll be because they're afraid of losing you, not because they truly respect me. You don't know that. Yes, I do, I said. Because if they had any real respect for me, they wouldn't have felt entitled to say those things in the first place. And if you had the kind of respect for me that I need, you wouldn't have needed me to threaten to leave before you took any of this seriously. His shoulders slumped, like he'd been carrying something heavy, and I'd just told him he wasn't allowed to put it on me anymore. Please, he whispered, don't do this. I love you. I loved who I thought you were, I said. The man who would stand up for me, who would put up a wall between me and anyone who tried to make me feel small. But that man, either he doesn't exist, or he isn't strong enough to show up. So that's it? He asked, voice breaking. You're just leaving? Yes, I said, I am. He stared at me, searching my face for some sign that I was bluffing, that I'd come around, that this was just a dramatic scene that would end with us in each other's arms. I didn't give him that. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life trying to prove my worth to people who have already decided I don't have any, I said. And I'm not going to be with someone who thinks love is enough to compensate for silence. I picked up my bag. My keys felt heavy in my hand. He reached out as if to touch my arm, then let his hand drop. Goodbye, Lucas, I said. Marina, he pleaded, please. I walked to the door, opened it, and stepped into the hallway. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my throat, but beneath the fear, there was something else. Relief. By the time the elevator doors closed, I'd already pulled out my phone. I blocked his number somewhere between his floor and the lobby. On the drive home, I cried. Messy, shaking tears that blurred the road and forced me to pull over once. Not because I doubted my decision, but because I finally let myself mourn the future I'd been planning in my head. The first week was hard. I reached for my phone 12 times a day. I drafted messages I never sent. I walked past his favorite brand of coffee at the grocery store and felt my chest ache. I cooked dinner and made too much food out of habit, automatically plating a second portion before scraping it back into the pan. But by the second week, I noticed something else. My shoulders felt lighter. I woke up in the morning and didn't brace myself for someone else's expectations. I went hiking without checking if he was free. I watched a movie he'd once called boring and realized it still made me feel quietly happy. For the first time in 2 years, I started to feel like my life belonged to me again. I thought that would be the end of it. I was wrong. By week 3, the silence between Lucas and me had settled into something almost comfortable, like the air after a storm, when everything is still damp and heavy, but the danger has passed. I didn't check his social media. I didn't ask our mutual friends how he was. I didn't stalk photos from the charity gala his parents had been so desperate for him to attend. Whatever happened, there wasn't my business anymore. I let myself believe that chapter was closed. Then an unknown number called. Normally, I don't answer those, but something in me, curiosity, intuition, maybe just boredom, made me swipe anyway. Hello? A beat of silence, then, Marina. I recognized the voice immediately. Smooth, tightly controlled, with an edge of sophistication she wielded like a blade. Lucas's mother. Every cell in my body told me to hang up. Instead, I exhaled slowly and said, "What do you want?" "We need to talk." No, we don't. "Please," she said, and there was a crack in her voice I hadn't heard before. "Just 5 minutes." I should have ended the call. I didn't. "Fine," I said, 5 minutes. Another pause, longer this time. "Something happened," she said. "At the gala." I stared at the kitchen counter where my half-cut apple was starting to brown. "What does that have to do with me?" "It's about Camille." Her voice tightened. "And Lucas." I didn't respond. She took that as permission to continue. "They were reconnecting. Or we thought they were." She swallowed audibly. But later in the evening, she found him in one of the private rooms. For one wild second, I thought she was about to say Camille and Lucas had hooked up. Some twisted symmetry. But then, he walked in on her, she corrected, with someone else, very publicly, very aggressively flirting with the son of one of my husband's business partners. I blinked. She confronted her, Lucas's mother continued, and Camille laughed, told her she was naive to think she was interested in anything serious. She said Lucas only approached her because we begged him to, that she was only there to network, not rekindle anything. I didn't say a word. "She humiliated him," she whispered, in front of half the board members. Something in my chest twisted. Not quite sympathy, not quite satisfaction. Something darker and sadder in between. "He's devastated," she added quietly. He hasn't left his room since yesterday." I leaned against my counter, rubbing my temple. "I'm sorry that happened to him," I said, and I meant it. "But I don't know why you're telling me." "Because we were wrong," she said instantly. "About her and about you." I let out a humorless breath. "It took Camilla humiliating your son in public for you to figure that out? That's not fair." "It's completely fair." She made a choked sound like she was trying not to cry. "We pushed you away," she said, "and we shouldn't have. You were good for him. Stable, kind, everything we said you weren't." My plainness is looking pretty appealing now, huh? "I didn't mean—" "You absolutely did," I cut in. "You called me ordinary. You questioned my ambition. You treated me like a placeholder until something better came along. And now that your preferred option laughed in your faces, suddenly I'm worthy?" I'm apologizing. "No, you're scrambling." Silence, a long, heavy silence. Then, softly, "Will you talk to him? Please? Just talk to him. He needs you." "He doesn't need me," I said. "He needs therapy and a spine." She inhaled sharply. "We made mistakes. You made patterns." My voice stayed calm. And they didn't break until they hurt you, not me. Another suffocating pause. You won't consider coming back, she whispered. No. Will you at least think about it? No, I repeated. Even if I wanted to, which I don't, nothing has changed. You disapprove, he absorbs it, and I end up being the one who has to shrink. That won't happen again. You can't guarantee that. I promise. Your promises, I said, mean nothing to me. She let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a sob. Please, he loves you. He loves the idea of me now that Camille isn't an option, I said. That's not love, that's convenience. Before she could respond, I ended the call. She called again. I declined. Again. Declined. A third time. Declined. Then the text started. We misjudged you. We're so sorry. We'll make this right. Please talk to him. He's hurting. I blocked the number. 2 days later, I pulled into my driveway after work and froze. Lucas's car was there, parked crookedly. He was sitting on my front steps, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. I stayed in my car, engine running. You need to leave, I said through the open window. He stood up. His eyes were swollen. Please, he whispered. Just talk to me. There's nothing to talk about. I'm sorry, he choked out. I was wrong. They were wrong. Everything was wrong. And yet, I said, nothing changes what happened. He took a shaky step toward my car. She humiliated me, he said, voice cracking, in front of everyone. My parents' friends, their business partners, people I've known since I was a kid. I've never felt so stupid. I'm genuinely sorry you went through that, I said softly. No one deserves to be mocked like that. He blinked rapidly, like he didn't expect my sympathy. But it doesn't change anything between us. He shook his head violently. It has to. I need you. You needed me to be impressive enough for your parents to tolerate, I said. Now you need me because someone else rejected you. Those aren't the same thing as choosing me. He took a breath that broke halfway through. I don't care what they think anymore, he insisted. I'll tell them that. I'll make them stop. I'll defend you. You will care, I said. Maybe not today, but eventually. You grew up with their approval being the air you breathe. You don't unlearn that in a week or a month. And I refuse to spend my life being your rebellion instead of your choice. His face crumpled. Please, he whispered. I love you. And I loved you, I said. But love without respect isn't love. It's slow damage. He took another step forward, reaching for my door handle. I locked it. His hand froze. Go home, Lucas, I said gently. Heal. Figure out who you are without your parents' voice in your head. But don't come here expecting me to fix you. Marina! I put the car in reverse. He stood there, eyes red, tears streaking down his face, watching me back out of the driveway. I didn't look away, not until I turned the corner. He tried calling that night. I didn't answer. He sent an email I deleted after reading the first line. He sent messages through 2 friends. I told them firmly to stop playing Messenger unless they wanted to lose me as a friend too. They got the hint. For a moment, I thought maybe, finally, this was over. But the Armitages were a family used to getting what they wanted. And they weren't done with me yet. The thing about wealthy families, the kind old money insulates like a bulletproof vest, is that they don't understand the word no. They treat it like a negotiation, a temporary inconvenience, a phase you'll eventually grow out of. So when I blocked Lucas, ignored his mother, and shut down every attempt at contact, I thought they'd give up. They didn't. They regrouped, and then they doubled down. The first attempt came in the form of a hand-delivered envelope, cream-colored, heavy, embossed with the Armitage crest like they were royalty. The courier handed it to me with a polite nod, as if delivering an invitation to a coronation. I didn't even make it past the first paragraph. It was 12 pages of Lucas's mother apologizing for misjudging me, for underestimating my character, for allowing long-standing expectations to cloud her judgment. It would have been touching if it weren't so blatantly self-serving. I dropped the pages back into the envelope and tossed it into the recycling bin with a hollow thud. I didn't cry. I didn't hesitate. I felt nothing. Not anger, not satisfaction, just confirmation. They weren't apologizing because they saw me. They were apologizing because they lost what they wanted. There's a difference. 2 days later, I walked into my workplace lobby and froze. Standing near the reception desk, jaw clenched, posture perfect, suit tailored within an inch of its life, was Lucas's father. He spotted me immediately and strode forward with all the confident entitlement of a man who believed doors should open simply because he approached them. Marina, he said without preamble, we need to talk. No, we don't. I'm offering to make things right. I almost laughed. I don't want anything from you. He exhaled sharply, as if I were being unreasonable. I'll give you a position at my firm, he said, lowering his voice like he was offering me a black market treasure. Better title than what you have now. Significant pay increase, executive track, corner office. I blinked once, slowly. You're trying to bribe me, I said. I'm trying to fix this. You can't fix this. He stepped closer. Marina, be reasonable. Mr. Armitage, I cut in. You insulted me for 2 years. Made sure I knew I wasn't good enough. And now that your perfect pick humiliated your son, you want to buy me back into his life like a corporate asset? His nostrils flared. It's exactly that, I said. You're not sorry. You just want the narrative back under your control. His jaw clenched so tightly I could see the muscle twitch. You're making a mistake, he said. No, I replied. I'm correcting one. Then I stepped past him and told the security guard, calmly and clearly, I don't want him here. The guard, who'd seen me for years, who knew me by name, nodded and escorted him out. He was angry. I was steady. That moment told me everything I needed to know about who had actually grown. The third attempt came through LinkedIn. LinkedIn, as if professionalism could disguise desperation. A message from Serena, Lucas's sister. We all behaved poorly. Let's be adults and talk this through. Lucas is hurting. You owe him at least a conversation. Don't let pride ruin something real. I blocked her. Pride wasn't the problem. Dignity was. And I wasn't giving mine up again. By week 5, their efforts only escalated. Text after text from new numbers. Voicemails from carefully coached apologies. Promises of therapy. Offers of money. Invitations to dinners. Just to talk. It was like watching a powerful machine frantically spinning its wheels, unable to accept that the person they'd underestimated had simply walked away. Every day reinforced the same truth. They weren't sorry for treating me badly. They were sorry their actions had consequences. That distinction was everything. Then came the night that sealed it. It was a Wednesday. I'd gone to the gym straight after work, determined not to let their drama seep into the routines that kept me sane. I was 30 minutes into my workout, sweat dripping, muscles burning, mind finally quiet, when I walked out to the parking lot and saw a familiar car parked near mine. My stomach sank. Lucas. He was leaning against the hood, arms folded like he'd been there for a while. When I approached, he straightened quickly. I'm not leaving, he said, voice raw. Not until you talk to me. Then you'll be here a long time. I didn't even slow down. I walked right past him, keyed open the driver's seat, and climbed in. He moved closer, panicked. Marina, please. I rolled down the window just an inch. Move. He stepped to the side, but only just. Please, he said again. Just hear me out. I exhaled, exhausted. Then I opened the car door and stepped out, because there was no way he'd let me drive away otherwise. You have 5 minutes, I said. After that, I'm leaving. He nodded too quickly, like he'd take anything I gave him. I cut them off, he blurted. My parents, my sister, all of them. I haven't spoken to them in 3 weeks. That's between you and them, I said. I did it for you. Don't do things for me, I replied. We're not together. His face twisted. But we could be. No, I said, we couldn't. Why not? His voice cracked. Why can't we fix this? I love you. I know, I said gently. But you don't love me more than you fear disappointing them. You never did. He swallowed hard. That's not true. It is, I said. And it's okay. I'm not angry about it anymore. I just refuse to live my life as someone's rebellion. He didn't respond. His eyes were shining, red-rimmed with exhaustion and grief. I continued, softer now. You're here because Camille didn't want you, because your family realized they'd been wrong, because everything fell apart, not because you suddenly understood my worth. If Camille had taken you back, you'd be with her right now. He closed his eyes as if the truth physically hurt. And so would they, I added quietly. Your parents would have celebrated. They would have said it was fate. You know I'm right. His silence was the answer. You're not with me because of love, I said. You're here because I'm your only option that doesn't sting. That's not fair, he whispered. It's completely fair, I paused. And it's not love. He stepped closer, desperate. I can change. No, I said. You can grow, maybe, but not into the man I need. We're not compatible, Lucas. We never were. We just wanted to believe we were. He stood there, crumbling in front of me, and I felt something inside me shift from pain to closure. You should go, I said softly. He pressed his hands to his face. Please, just please. I want someone who thinks I'm impressive exactly as I am, I said. Someone who doesn't need me to earn my seat at the table. You're not that person. His shoulders sagged. And that's okay, I added. But I'm done trying to force a fit. He didn't follow when I got back into my car. I started the engine. In the rearview mirror, he stayed standing there, shrinking smaller and smaller until he was just a dark blur in the parking lot. By the time I reached the intersection, he was gone. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. 2 months. That's how long it had been since I stood in that gym parking lot, watching Lucas fade into the background of my life like a chapter finally finished. 2 months since the last message, the last plea, the last attempt by the Armitages to pull me back into a world that had never been built for me. 2 months of no drama. No apologies wrapped in entitlement. No begging disguised as devotion. No wealthy family politics bleeding into my day-to-day. Just quiet. And not the lonely kind, the peaceful kind. The kind that lets you hear yourself again. It surprised me how quickly I returned to my own rhythm once there wasn't someone else's chaos orbiting my world. On Saturday mornings, I started waking up without that tight, bracing feeling in my chest, the one that used to come before every Armitage family event. I brewed my coffee the way I liked it, not the way Lucas preferred. I ate breakfast at my cluttered little kitchen table, sunlight spilling across unpaid bills and grocery lists, and it looked like home, not failure. I started hiking again, really hiking, not the polite couples version where every trail had to be mutually approved and Instagram friendly. I joined a new group, a smaller one. People who didn't care what I did for a living or whether my shoes were practical in a patronizing tone. The first time I stood on a ridge overlooking the valley, at sunrise, cool air biting my cheeks, I felt something click into place. This is mine, my pace, my breath, my life, not borrowed from anyone else's expectations. I also started saying yes to invitations I used to decline because they interfered with Lucas's schedule. After-work dinners, trivia nights, even a pottery class where my mug came out crooked and slightly melted looking. I laughed more in those 2 months than I had the entire previous year. One afternoon, I ran into a coworker in the break room, Alana, a project manager with a dry sense of humor and the kind of smile that always looked like she knew a secret about the universe. We'd worked together for years, but this time she paused, leaned against the counter and said, "You look lighter." I blinked. "Lighter?" "Yeah," she said, pouring tea. "Like someone finally took a boulder off your shoulders." I let out a quiet laugh. Maybe someone did. She didn't push. She didn't pry. She just nodded, as if that was all the confirmation she needed. A week later, she asked if I wanted to grab dinner after work. I hesitated for half a second. Old habits die hard. Then said, "Sure." Not because I was ready for anything serious. Not because I wanted to prove anything, but because it felt easy. The restaurant was nothing like the places Lucas favored. No marble tabletops, no curated wine lists, no patrons whispering the names of board members or referencing ski cabins in Aspen. It was a tiny corner bistro with mismatched chairs and walls painted in warm, earthy tones. The air smelled like butter and garlic. Conversations hummed around us, soft, ordinary, human. We ordered without overthinking it. Alana got a pasta dish that arrived steaming and chaotic, noodles piled like a small mountain. I got roasted chicken with potatoes that tasted like comfort. Halfway through the meal, she asked, "So what do you do for fun? Outside of spreadsheets and drainage reports?" I laughed. "Hiking mostly, reading. I'm pretty simple." She twirled a strand of pasta around her fork and looked up at me. "Simple is good," she said. "Simple is honest." I don't know why those 3 words hit as deeply as they did. Maybe because for 2 years, simple had been an insult, a synonym for plain. Something to apologize for, something to compensate for. But hearing it now, with no judgment attached, no hierarchy implied, it felt different. It felt like permission, like the universe nudging me and whispering, "See? You were never the problem." For the rest of dinner, the conversation flowed effortlessly. Work stories turned into hiking stories. Childhood memories turned into bizarre houseplant tragedies. Every topic felt light, natural, unperformed. Not once did she look past me the way Lucas's family had. Not once did she measure my worth in ambition metrics or pedigree points. Not once did she make me feel like someone she had to explain to anyone else. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was auditioning. I felt seen. Not as a project, not as a compromise, not as a consolation prize after someone shinier walked away. Just, Marina, unpolished, ordinary, honest. Enough. A few days later, a coworker asked if I ever regretted leaving Lucas. It was a harmless question, not laced with gossip or judgment, just curiosity. I thought for a long moment, sipping my coffee, tracing the rim of the mug with my finger. Not even a little, I said. Really? What about everything that happened with his ex? That wasn't my win, I said. That was their wake-up call, and it had nothing to do with me. But you loved him. I loved who I thought he was, I corrected gently. The man who would stand up for me, who would defend me, who would choose me, even when it cost him something. Maybe he can become that man someday. Maybe, I agreed, but I won't be there when he does, and that's okay. She nodded slowly, then asked, So what changed for you? I smiled, soft and certain. I realized that love without respect is just pain with better marketing. She laughed, surprised but wholeheartedly, and said, That's dark. It's true, I said. Then I finished the last sip of my coffee and felt a quiet warmth spread through me. Not triumph, not vindication, just peace. Because for the first time in a long time, I wasn't measuring myself against anyone else's expectations. I wasn't waiting for someone to choose me. I wasn't auditioning for a seat at a table where I never truly belonged. I had walked away. I had rebuilt. And I had finally found the version of myself who didn't need external validation to breathe. Ordinary, simple, stable, real. All the things the Armitages had mocked. All the things